Okay, so next step, ethical foundations. So the fast AI approach, we always like to kind of ground everything in what are the real world case studies before we get to kind of the theory underpinning it. And I'm not going to go too deep on this at all. So there's a fun article, What Would an Avenger Do? And hat tip to Casey Fiesler for suggesting this. And it goes through kind of three common ethical philosophies, utilitarianism, and gives the example of Iron Man, trying to maximize good, deontological ethics of Captain America being an example of this, adhering to the right, and then virtue ethics, Thor, living by a code of honor. And so I thought that was a nice reading. Yes?
Where do you stand on the argument that social media companies are just neutral platforms and that problematic content is the entire responsibility of the users, just the same way that phone companies aren't held responsible when phones are used for scams, or car companies held responsible when vehicles are used for, say, terrorist attacks?
So I do not think that that the platforms are neutral, because they make a number of design decisions and enforcement decisions around even kind of what their terms of service are and how those are enforced, and that in keeping in mind harassment can drive many people off of platforms, and so many of those decisions, it's not that everybody gets to keep free speech when there's no enforcement. It's just changing kind of who is silenced. I do think that there are a lot of really difficult questions that are raised about this, because I think that the platforms, they are not publishers, but they are in this, I think, kind of intermediate area where they're performing many of the functions that publishers used to perform. Like a newspaper, which is curating which articles are in it, which is not what platforms are doing, but they are getting closer to that. Something I come back to is it is an uncomfortable amount of power for private companies to have. And so it does raise a lot of difficult decisions, but I do not believe that they are neutral. So for this part, I mentioned the Markkula Center earlier. Definitely check out their site, Ethics and Technology Practice. They have a lot of useful resources. And I'm going to go through these relatively quickly as just kind of examples. So they give some kind of deontological questions that technologists could ask. And so deontological ethics are where you kind of have various kind of rights or duties that you might want to respect. And this can include principles like privacy or autonomy. How might the dignity and autonomy of each stakeholder be impacted by this project? What considerations of trust and of justice are relevant? Does this project involve any conflicting moral duties to others? In some cases, there'll be kind of conflict between different rights or duties you're considering. And so this is kind of an example, and they have more in the reading of the types of questions you could be asking, kind of when evaluating, of just even how do you evaluate kind of whether a project is ethical. Consequentialist questions, who will be directly affected, who will be indirectly affected, and consequentialist includes utilitarianism as well as common good. Will the effects in aggregate create more good than harm, and what types of good and harm? Are you thinking about all the relevant types of harm and benefit, including psychological, political, environmental, moral, cognitive, emotional, institutional, cultural, also looking at long-term benefits and harms? And then who experiences them? Is this something where the risk of the harm are going to fall disproportionately on the least powerful? Who's going to be the ones to accrue the benefits? Have you considered dual use? And so these are again kind of questions you could use when trying to evaluate a project. And I think, and the recommendation of the Markkula Center is that this is a great activity to be doing as a team and as a group.
I was going to say, like, I can't I can't overstate how useful this tool is. Like, you might think, oh, it's just a list of questions, yeah, But like, this is kind of, to me, this is the big gun tool for how you handle this. Is like, if somebody's helping you think about the right set of questions, and then you like go through them with a diverse group of people and discuss the questions. I mean, this is gold. Like, don't go back and reread these, and don't just skip over them, because take them to work, use them next time you're talking about a project. They're a really great set of questions to use, a great tool in your toolbox.
Yeah, and go to the original reading has even kind of more detail and more elaboration on the questions. And then they kind of give a summary of 5 potential ethical lenses. The rights approach, which option best respects the rights of all who have a stake. The justice approach, which option treats people equally or proportionally. And so these two are both deontological. The utilitarian approach, which option will produce the most good and do the least harm. The common good approach, which option best serves the community as a whole, not just some members. And so here 3 and 4 are both consequentialist. And then virtue approach, which option leads me to act as the sort of person I want to be. And that can involve, particular virtues of, do you value trustworthiness or truth or courage? And so, a great activity, if this is something that you're studying or talking about at work with your teammates, the Markkula Center has a number of case studies that you can talk through, and we'll even ask you to kind of evaluate them through these 5 lenses, and how does that kind of impact your take on what the right thing to do is.
It's kind of weird for a programmer, a computer programmer, or data scientist in some ways to like think of these as tools like Fast AI or Pandas or whatever, but I mean, they absolutely are. These are like software tools for your brain, to help you kind of go through a program that might help you debug your thinking.
Great, thank you. And then, as someone brought up earlier, so that was a kind of very Western-centric intro to ethical philosophy. There are other ethical lenses in other cultures, and I've been doing some reading, particularly on the Maori worldview. I don't feel confident enough in my understanding that I could represent it, but it is very good to be mindful that there are other ethical lenses out there, and I do very much think that. The people being impacted by a technology, like their ethical lens is kind of what matters, and that this is a particular issue when we have so many kind of multinational corporations. And there's an interesting project going on in New Zealand now, where the New Zealand government is kind of considering its AI approach, and is at least ostensibly kind of wanting to include the Maori view on that. So that's